Jake Morrison sat in the diplomatic chamber and felt his patience wearing thin like old cloth stretched too far. 3 months he had been here on the Axios Prime Station, talking with the relics about a simple trade agreement. 3 months of watching Ambassador Chitara click her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her insect-like species while she changed terms and added impossible demands. Lieutenant Emma Park stood behind Jake and watched the proceedings with growing concern. She had served with Jake for 7 years and knew his tells better than anyone. The way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The way his breathing became measured and deliberate. The way his hands went perfectly still on the conference table. These were not good signs. Chitara waved one of her 4 arms dismissively at the latest human proposal. Her translator rendered her clicking speech into galactic standard with perfect clarity. The young species do not understand the complexities of interstellar commerce. Perhaps in another century, when Earth has matured beyond its primitive roots, we can discuss actual terms. The other delegates around the circular table shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Thorne of the Saurox Imperium exchanged a glance with the crystalline representative from the Luminae Collective. Both had been in the galaxy long enough to recognize danger when they saw it. The relics were new to galactic politics compared to them. Only 300 years since they had achieved faster than light travel. They did not understand the unspoken rules that governed interactions with humanity. Jake took a slow breath and spoke with careful politeness. Ambassador Chitara, we have been negotiating in good faith for 90 standard days. Earth has made concessions on tariffs, mineral rights, and shipping lanes. We ask only for fair terms that benefit both our peoples. Perhaps we could review the original framework we discussed in week 1. Chitara laughed again, and the sound scraped against the nerves of everyone present. She leaned forward on her multiple legs, and her compound eyes glittered with something that looked like contempt. Fair terms, she repeated. Your backwater world wants fair terms. Earth is a breeding ground for aggressive primitives who stumbled into space travel through luck and violence. You have no concept of fairness, only of taking what you want through force. The room went silent. Even the station's ventilation system seemed to hold its breath. Emma immediately activated her personal communicator and sent out a priority alert to all human personnel on the station. She did not use words. She did not need to. The alert simply read code yellow, and every human who received it knew exactly what that meant. Jake stood up slowly. The movement was controlled and precise like a machine coming online. His face showed nothing, but his eyes had changed. They had gone flat and cold like windows into deep space. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and level, and somehow more frightening than any shout could have been. Now I'm getting annoyed. 5 words. The translator rendered them perfectly into every language spoken in that chamber. 5 simple words that made Ambassador Thorne grab his aide and start moving toward the exit. 5 words that caused the Luminae representative to shift her crystalline form into a defensive configuration. 5 words that sent a shiver through every species present except one. Chitara clicked her mandibles in what her people considered amusement. She did not understand why the other delegates were evacuating. She did not know the stories that every spacefaring civilization told their young. She had never bothered to study human history or human behavior beyond the basic diplomatic briefings. This was her fatal error. You are annoyed, she said, with mockery clear in her tone. How terrifying. What will you do, human? Write a strongly worded complaint? Refuse to sign our generous terms? Perhaps you will stomp your feet like a child denied a treat. Her military advisor, a scarred veteran named Crix, grabbed at her ceremonial robes and chittered urgently in their native language. Ambassador, we must leave now. The human has given the warning. We must evacuate immediately. Chitara shoved Crix away with 2 of her arms. Fool, she snapped. They are a young species barely 200 years in space. They may have fought wars on their primitive world, but here among civilized peoples, they are nothing. They are to be managed and controlled and taught their place. Emma stepped forward and positioned herself between Jake and the Relics delegation. Her voice was calm, but urgent, like someone trying to prevent a natural disaster. Ambassador Chitara, I strongly suggest you listen to your advisor. In human culture, when someone says they are getting annoyed, it is not a threat. It is a courtesy warning. It is your last chance to walk away. Chitara rose to her full height on all 6 legs. Her compound eyes fixed on Emma with undisguised disdain. A courtesy warning, she repeated. How primitive. How unsophisticated. On Relics Prime, we do not waste words on meaningless posturing. We act with purpose and decisiveness. She turned to her guards, who stood at attention near the chamber doors. Remove these humans from this chamber, she commanded. Use force if they resist. Show them that the Relics Consortium does not tolerate insolence from lesser species. The guards looked at each other. They were soldiers, not diplomats, but they had served in the border regions where human ships patrolled. They had heard the stories from other species. They had attended the mandatory briefings on human combat capabilities and psychological profiles. Every military in the galaxy gave the same lecture to their troops. If you encounter humans in combat, follow standard engagement protocols. If a human tells you they are getting annoyed, disengage immediately and retreat to minimum safe distance. The senior guard placed his plasma rifle on the ground and stepped back from it. His name was Torque, and he had fought in 3 wars before joining the diplomatic corps. He knew the difference between bravery and stupidity. With respect, Ambassador Chitara, he said carefully, I must decline that order. What? Chitara shrieked. You dare refuse a direct command? The other guards followed Torque's example. One by one, they disarmed themselves and backed away from the human delegation. A junior guard named Vex actually turned and ran from the chamber entirely. This was mutiny. This was treason. This was common sense colliding with pride, and pride was losing badly. Chitara's rage overrode what little judgment she possessed. If you will not act, then I will, she declared. She moved to the chamber control panel and began activating the automated defense systems. Emergency protocols flickered to life. The chamber doors sealed with heavy magnetic locks. Plasma turrets descended from hidden ceiling compartments and swiveled to target the human delegation. The station, AI, immediately broadcast a station-wide alert. Emergency defensive systems activated in Diplomatic Chamber 7. All personnel evacuate surrounding sections. Human delegation under automated fire protocols. This is not a drill. Emma grabbed her emergency beacon and activated it with a specific frequency. The message went out to every ship in docking range. Human in distress state. Possible hostile action imminent. Recommend all vessels move to minimum safe distance of 5,000 kilometers. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, Emma saw what she had only seen twice before in their 7 years together. Her captain was gone. The diplomat was gone. The calm professional officer who preferred negotiation to conflict was gone. What stood before her now was Lieutenant Jake Morrison, formerly of the Earth Marine Corps Special Operations Division. What stood before her was a man who had survived the Proxima incident and the pacification of the disputed belt. What stood before her was a human who had stopped pretending to be civilized. Emma, he said quietly, clear the hallway outside. Make sure no one gets hurt who does not need to get hurt. She did not question the order. She moved, and Jake Morrison turned his attention to solving the problem that Ambassador Chitara had become. The plasma turrets hummed with deadly energy as they tracked Jake Morrison across the diplomatic chamber. Chitara stood at the control panel with all 4 of her arms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. She believed she had won. She believed she had put the upstart human in his place. She believed she was in control of the situation. She was wrong on all counts. Jake assessed the chamber with the cold efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. 4 automated turrets, magnetic door locks, reinforced walls rated for diplomatic protection, which meant they could withstand small arms fire but not sustained assault. Emergency power systems separate from main station grid. Atmospheric controls tied to central life support. Security cameras feeding to Station Operations Center. All standard Galactic Council diplomatic chamber configurations. He had memorized these layouts in his first week aboard the station. Not because he expected trouble, but because preparing for trouble was as natural to him as breathing. Earth's military trained its officers to think 3 steps ahead of every possible scenario. By the time Jake had entered this chamber 3 months ago, he already knew 17 ways to disable it. Chitara was still talking. Her voice carried the sharp edge of victory. "You see, human," she clicked. "This is what happens when primitive species challenge their betters. You will surrender now. You will sign the terms I have dictated. You will return to your little blue world and tell your leaders that the Vrelix Consortium is not to be trifled with. Torque and the other Vrelix guards had moved as far from the humans as the sealed chamber would allow. They pressed themselves against the far wall and watched with the horrified fascination of people witnessing an impending disaster. Torque had served in the border conflicts. He had seen what humans could do when they stopped being diplomatic. He had no desire to see it again. Emma had made it to the chamber's secondary exit before the magnetic locks engaged. She stood now in the corridor, beyond speaking rapidly into her communicator. All human personnel evacuate sections 12 through 18. This is code yellow escalating to code red. Captain Morrison is engaged. Repeat, Captain Morrison is engaged. Throughout the station, humans moved with practiced precision. Chief Engineer Marcus Kim was in the main engineering bay when the alert came through. He did not panic. He did not rush. He simply pulled up the station schematic on his terminal and began mapping access points to Chamber 7. His fingers flew across the controls as he bypassed security protocols that the Galactic Council thought were secure. In the medical wing, Dr. Lisa Chun received the alert and immediately began preparing trauma facilities. She turned to the multi-species medical staff and spoke in calm, measured tones. "We need to prep for incoming psychological trauma primarily, possibly some minor physical injuries." When the staff looked confused, she added, "A human got annoyed, and someone did not run." The alien doctors understood immediately. The Saurox physician began preparing sedatives for species prone to shock. The Lumine healer shifted her crystalline structure to optimize for mental stabilization treatments. The young Vrelix medical intern went pale beneath his exoskeleton and had to sit down. Back in Chamber 7, Jake had not moved. He stood in the same spot where he had risen from his chair and simply looked at Chitara. The plasma turrets tracked him but had not fired. Chitara noticed this and checked her control panel. The targeting system showed full functionality. The weapons were armed and ready. Yet they held their fire. "Fire," she commanded. The systems did not respond. Jake spoke for the first time since his warning. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "The station AI has a safety override for diplomatic chambers. It will not allow automated weapons to fire on diplomatic personnel unless they show hostile intent. I am standing still. I am unarmed. I am not displaying aggression. Therefore, the system will not fire." Chitara slammed 2 of her hands against the control panel. "Then I will override the safety protocols," she declared. She began entering commands with furious speed. Jake tilted his head slightly. "You should not do that," he said. The words carried no threat, no anger. They were simply a statement of fact, like commenting on the weather. Chitara ignored him. She was consumed by her rage, by her wounded pride, by her absolute certainty that she was in the right. She entered the final command sequence, and the safety protocols disengaged. The plasma turrets gave a different hum now. A hungry sound. They were no longer bound by restrictions. "Fire!" she screamed. The turrets fired. 4 plasma bolts converged on the spot where Jake had been standing. They struck nothing but air. Jake had moved the instant before the weapons discharged. He had not run or dodged wildly. He had simply stepped to the side with economy of motion that suggested he knew exactly where the bolts would travel. Emma watched through the small window in the sealed door and felt her stomach clench. She had seen Jake in combat before. She knew what he was capable of. But it never stopped being frightening to watch a human shift from diplomat to weapon. The turrets tracked Jake as he moved across the chamber. They fired again and again. Each time he was somewhere else. Not faster than the weapons, but faster than Chitara's ability to target him. He moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually calculated to exploit the turret's tracking algorithms. Standard Galactic Council automated defense systems had a 0.3-second delay between target acquisition and firing. Jake moved in 0.25-second intervals. Chitara watched in growing horror as her weapons failed to hit their target. "This is impossible," she said. "No organic being can move faster than automated targeting systems." Jake was now halfway across the chamber. He still had not drawn a weapon or made any aggressive gesture. He was simply walking toward Chitara while plasma bolts vaporized the air around him. "You are correct," he said. "I am not moving faster than the systems. I am moving smarter." He reached the first turret and pulled a maintenance stylus from his uniform pocket. The tool was standard issue for diplomatic personnel. It could interface with most Galactic Council technology for basic adjustments and repairs. In Jake's hands, it became something else entirely. He pressed the stylus against the turret's access port and entered a command sequence. The turret stopped firing. Its targeting system went dark. The whole process took 4 seconds. "Impossible," Chitara repeated. "Those systems require authorization codes that only Council security personnel possess." Jake moved to the second turret. "Actually," he said conversationally, "they require authorization codes that only Council security personnel are supposed to possess. But humanity joined the Council 50 years ago. We have had 5 decades to study your systems, to find the vulnerabilities, to map the backdoors that every technology has, because perfect security does not exist." The second turret went dark. Then the third. Chitara backed away from the control panel as Jake approached the fourth and final weapon. She was beginning to understand the magnitude of her error. She was beginning to realize that the stories were true. All the warnings from other species. All the cautionary tales told in military academies across the galaxy. They were not exaggerations. Jake disabled the fourth turret and turned his full attention to Chitara. He still had not touched her, had not threatened her, had not raised his voice. He simply stood there and looked at her with those flat, cold eyes that reflected the absolute certainty of someone who knew they had already won. Torque saw what was coming. He grabbed the nearest guard and pulled him toward the sealed door. "We need to get out," he said. "We need to get out right now." But the doors were sealed. The magnetic locks held firm. They were trapped in the chamber with a human who had stopped pretending to be civilized and an ambassador who had finally realized what she had unleashed. Jake took 1 step forward, then another. Chitara backed away until she hit the wall. She raised her arms in what might have been surrender or defense or simply disbelief. Jake stopped 3 feet from her. He crossed his arms and spoke in that same calm conversational tone. "Ambassador Chitara, you made several mistakes today. You insulted my world. You threatened my crew. You activated weapons in a diplomatic chamber. Any one of these would have been problematic. All three together represent a violation of every treaty and protocol that governs council interactions. Chitara could not speak. Her mandibles clicked uselessly. Her compound eyes were wide with something the relics rarely experienced. Fear. Jake continued. But your biggest mistake was not listening when I gave you a warning. Every species in this galaxy knows the rule. When a human says they are getting annoyed, you run. Not because we will hurt you, but because we will stop treating you as a partner and start treating you as a problem. And humans are very good at solving problems. He leaned forward slightly. Now I am going to solve the problem of this diplomatic chamber. I am going to unlock the doors. I am going to let everyone leave. And then you and I are going to have a very different kind of conversation about the terms of this trade agreement. Do you understand? Chitara managed a small nod. Her entire body was shaking. Jake Morrison walked to the chamber control panel with measured steps. Chitara remained pressed against the wall, unable to move or speak. The Vrelic's guards watched as Jake examined the systems that Chitara had activated. His fingers moved across the interface with casual familiarity, like someone checking the time rather than dismantling a diplomatic crisis. Emma waited outside the sealed door. Her communicator buzzed constantly with updates from other human personnel on the station. Marcus had accessed the power grid for this section and stood ready to cut electrical flow if needed. Lisa had trauma teams staged near the chamber exits. 3 human security officers had arrived and taken positions to ensure no one else entered the area. Through the small window, Emma could see Jake working at the control panel. She knew what he was doing. Not just unlocking doors, but mapping the entire security system. Understanding it completely. Making sure nothing like this could happen again. This was how humans approached problems. They did not just solve them. They understood them so thoroughly that the problems ceased to exist. Inside the chamber, Jake spoke without looking at Chitara. Your security systems are based on Luminae crystal technology, adapted by the Soraks military and modified for council use. They are approximately 200 years old in design. Very reliable. Very stable. Also very predictable once you understand the underlying architecture. He pressed 3 commands in sequence. The magnetic locks on the doors released with a heavy clunk. The door opened, and Emma stepped inside immediately. She moved to Jake's side and assessed the situation with quick glances. 4 disabled turrets. 1 traumatized ambassador. 6 guards who looked ready to bolt at any moment. 1 captain who had returned to his calm, professional demeanor as if nothing had happened. Are you all right, sir? Emma asked. Jake nodded. I am fine. Please escort Ambassador Chitara's guards out of the chamber. Make sure they receive medical evaluation for shock. Also, please inform station security that there was a diplomatic incident, but it has been resolved without violence. Emma gestured to the guards. Torque moved first, grateful for the permission to leave. The others followed quickly. As they passed Jake, they gave him wide berth, as if proximity to him might be dangerous. Vex, the young guard who had run earlier, waited for them in the corridor. He looked relieved that his cowardice had kept him out of the chamber. Only Jake and Chitara remained now. She had not moved from her position against the wall. Her compound eyes tracked his every movement. Her breathing came in rapid clicks that signaled distress in Relic's physiology. Jake pulled out a chair from the conference table and sat down. He gestured to another chair across from him. Ambassador Chitara, please sit. We need to talk. Chitara did not move. Her body language screamed prey animal frozen before a predator. Jake waited patiently. He did not repeat the request. Did not threaten. Did not move. He simply sat and waited as if he had all the time in the world. After a long moment, Chitara managed to push herself away from the wall. She moved on unsteady legs to the chair Jake had indicated and lowered herself into it. Her arms twitched with nervous energy. She could not meet his eyes. Jake spoke in the same conversational tone he had used throughout. Let me explain something about humans that other species often misunderstand. We did not evolve as ambush predators like your people. We did not evolve with natural weapons like claws or venom or armored hides. We evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? Chitara managed a small shake of her head. It means, Jake continued, that we did not catch our prey by being faster or stronger. We caught our prey by never stopping. We would track an animal for days, sometimes weeks. We would keep going when it tried to rest. We would follow it through heat and cold and rain. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and we would walk up to it and take what we needed. This is written into our bones, Ambassador. This is what we are at our core. He leaned forward slightly. When I told you I was getting annoyed, I was not threatening you with violence. I was warning you that you had activated that ancient instinct. The one that says here is a problem that will not go away until I make it go away. You became prey in my mind, not because I wanted to hurt you, but because you would not stop creating obstacles. Do you understand? Chitara's voice was barely a whisper when she finally spoke. I understand. Jake nodded. Good. Now let us discuss the trade agreement. The real trade agreement without games or insults or power plays. You want access to Earth's agricultural output, particularly our grain varieties that grow in low-light conditions. We want access to your advanced manufacturing techniques for bioadaptive materials. These are mutually beneficial goals. Why have we spent 3 months arguing about them? Chitara's mandibles clicked nervously. Because I was instructed to extract maximum concessions from Earth, to establish relic superiority in the negotiations, to make an example of humanity as a young species that must learn its place. Instructed by whom? Jake asked. The Consortium Council. They see Earth's rapid expansion as a threat to established power structures. They believe that if humanity gains equal footing in trade, it will upset the balance that has existed for centuries. Jake considered this information. So your people sent you here to fail. They wanted these negotiations to collapse so they could point to humanity as unreasonable and aggressive. They wanted to create a diplomatic incident that would justify restricting human expansion. Yes, Chitara admitted. I did not understand this until now. I thought I was being a strong negotiator. I thought I was serving my people. But they were using me as a tool to provoke you. Jake stood and walked to the large window that looked out on the stars beyond the station. The lights of dozens of ships moved in the darkness like slow fireflies. He spoke without turning around. The problem with that strategy is that it assumes humans will react with aggression that can be condemned by the Council. But we learned long ago that uncontrolled aggression is self-defeating. So we developed something that frightens other species even more than violence. We developed control. He turned to face Chitara. I did not hurt you today, Ambassador. I did not even touch you. I disabled your weapons. I bypassed your security. I demonstrated absolute capability while maintaining absolute restraint. And that is what terrifies the Consortium Council. Not that humanity is violent, but that we can choose not to be violent, while still achieving our goals. Meanwhile, in the station's operations center, Marcus Kim had finished his work. He had mapped every security system in the diplomatic section. He had found 3 other backdoors in the Galactic Council's supposedly secure networks. He had documented everything and encrypted it for later analysis. When Emma arrived to check on him, he simply smiled and said, "The captain was right. Their security is 200 years old. We could run this entire station from a maintenance terminal if we needed to." Emma shook her head. "Let us hope we never need to." How much did they see? Marcus gestured to the monitors, showing station security feeds. Everything. Every moment. Every move Jake made. It is already spreading through the diplomatic channels. By tomorrow, every species on this station will know what happened. In the medical wing, Lisa Chun was treating Vex, the young Relics guard, for shock. His vitals were stable, but he kept repeating the same words. He moved like death. Like patient, inevitable death. How do you fight something that does not stop? Lisa spoke gently. You do not fight it. You listen when it warns you. That is what the warning is for. She administered a mild sedative and added, Your people will learn. Just like every other species has learned. Humans do not want to fight. But if you make us solve a problem, we will solve it permanently. Back in Chamber 7, Jake and Chitara had been talking for over an hour. They had reviewed every point of the trade agreement, stripped away the politics and posturing, found the common ground that had been there all along buried under layers of diplomatic maneuvering. Chitara was different now. The arrogance was gone. The mockery was gone. In its place was something like respect mixed with healthy caution. Ambassador Jake said, I am going to recommend to Earth that we approve this agreement as we have now discussed it. I am also going to recommend that you be allowed to continue as the Relics representative despite today's incident. Chitara looked up in surprise. Why would you do that? Because Jake said, You learned something today. You learned that humans keep their word. When I said I was getting annoyed, it was not a bluff or a negotiating tactic. It was exactly what I said. A warning. You did not listen and you faced the consequences. But those consequences did not include violence or revenge or punishment beyond what was necessary to solve the immediate problem. You will remember this lesson. You will share it with your people. And perhaps next time the Consortium Council tries to use someone as a tool, they will think twice. Chitara was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke with genuine curiosity. What would you have done if I had not sealed the chamber? If I had simply continued to insult you without activating weapons? Jake smiled slightly. I would have packed my things and left. I would have filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Council. I would have recommended that Earth pursue trade agreements with other species instead. You only saw this side of me because you trapped me and threatened my crew. Never forget that, Ambassador. Humans are not looking for. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 48 hours after the incident in Chamber 7. Representatives from 37 species gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall aboard Axios Prime Station. The chamber was massive, with seating arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing security footage from multiple angles. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. High Chancellor Varn of the Council Directorate called the session to order. His species, the Kareth, were known for their fairness and diplomatic skill. They had mediated conflicts for over 1,000 years. Vorin had seen many incidents in his long career, but few had generated this much attention. We are here to review the events of 2 days past, he announced. A diplomatic negotiation between the Terran delegation and the Relics Consortium resulted in the activation of defensive systems within a council chamber. We must determine responsibility and appropriate response. The Relics delegation sat in there, assigned section looking smaller and more subdued than usual. Chitara was not present. She had been recalled to Relics Prime for consultation with the Consortium Council. In her place sat Ambassador Trell, an older Relics with scarred chitin and tired eyes. He had fought in the border conflicts 20 years ago. He knew what was coming. Ambassador Thorin of the Saurox Imperium requested permission to speak. Vorin acknowledged him with a gesture. Thorin rose to his considerable height and his scales gleamed under the chamber lights. He had prepared his statement carefully. It needed to be heard. High Chancellor, members of the Council, I speak today, not to condemn, but to educate. The events in Chamber 7 were regrettable, but entirely predictable to those who understand human nature. I propose that we view the security footage together, and I will provide context that many of you may lack. The holographic displays activated, showing the final 30 minutes of the negotiation. The Council watched as Chitara insulted Earth, as she activated the defensive systems. As Jake Morrison gave his warning, Thorin paused the footage at the moment. Jake said the words, "Now, I am getting annoyed." This moment, Thorin said, is critical. In human culture, this phrase is not a threat. It is a formal warning that diplomatic engagement has failed and problem-solving protocols will commence. Every species that has dealt extensively with humanity knows this. The Soraks learned it during the border disputes. The Luminae learned it during the mining rights negotiations on Kethra 7. The Proxima Confederacy learned it during their initial contact. This is not secret knowledge. This is basic diplomatic protocol when dealing with humans. He resumed the footage. The Council watched as the other alien delegates evacuated, as Chitara ignored her own military advisor's warnings. As she armed the automated turrets, Thorin paused again. Observe that Captain Morrison does not react with aggression. He instructs his second officer to clear the surrounding areas. He ensures no collateral damage will occur. Even in this moment when he's been threatened with deadly force, his primary concern is the safety of bystanders. The footage continued. The Council watched Jake dismantle the defensive systems with nothing but a maintenance stylus. They watched him move through plasma fire with calculated precision. They watched him approach Chitara without harming her or even touching her. When the footage ended, the chamber was silent. A representative from the Kryn Collective spoke up. Her voice carried confusion and concern. The human bypassed Council security systems in minutes. Systems that are supposed to be impenetrable. This represents a massive security breach. Should we not be discussing sanctions against Earth for this violation? Thorin responded immediately. With respect, Council member Ilyana, the systems are not impenetrable. They never were. The Soraks military has known about these vulnerabilities for decades. We reported them to the Council Security Division 15 years ago. The reports were filed, but no action was taken, because upgrading the systems would be costly, and there was no perceived threat. Humans did not create these vulnerabilities. They simply exploited what already existed. High Chancellor Vorn spoke. Then, why did the Soraks not exploit them themselves if they were known? Because Thorin said simply we had no reason to. The security systems were adequate for deterrence. It takes a specific combination of technical knowledge, tactical training, and psychological pressure to bypass them, as Captain Morrison did. Most species lack that combination. Humans possess it naturally because of how they evolved and how they train their personnel. The Luminae representative shifted her crystalline form to indicate she wished to speak. Her voice resonated with harmonics that the translators rendered as concern. I have reviewed the complete logs of Captain Morrison's actions during the incident. He disabled 17 separate defense systems. He bypassed 4 independent security checkpoints. He identified and exploited 3 previously unknown vulnerabilities in our protocols. He accomplished all of this while under fire from automated weapons and without causing a single physical injury to anyone present. This level of capability is unprecedented in Council records. She paused, and her crystalline structure pulsed with what might have been respect or fear, or both. But what concerns me most is the restraint. Captain Morrison had multiple opportunities to harm Ambassador Chitara. He chose not to. He had the technical ability to damage or disable large sections of this station. He chose not to. He demonstrated total capability paired with total control. This combination is what makes humanity unique among spacefaring species. They can do terrible things, but they choose not to unless absolutely necessary. Ambassador Trell of the Relics requested permission to speak. Voran granted it. Trell rose slowly, as if the weight of his words pressed down on him. High Chancellor, members of the Council, I must speak a difficult truth. The Consortium Council instructed Ambassador Chitara to provoke this incident. We were told to extract impossible concessions from Earth, to insult them, to create a diplomatic crisis that would justify restricting human expansion in this sector. I served in the military before becoming a diplomat. I advised against this strategy. I was overruled. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Voran called for order. Ambassador Trell, are you stating that the Relics Consortium deliberately attempted to manipulate Council proceedings? Yes, Trell said. And we failed catastrophically. Not because the humans reacted with uncontrolled aggression as we anticipated, but because they reacted with controlled precision. Ambassador Chitara has submitted her full report to the Consortium Council. She has recommended that the Relics issue a formal apology to Earth and accept full responsibility for the incident. She has also recommended that our people study human diplomatic protocols extensively before attempting future negotiations. The Consortium Council has accepted her recommendations. Voran absorbed this information. He looked at the human delegation seated in their section. Emma Park sat there along with Marcus Kim and Lisa Chun. Captain Morrison himself had not attended, claiming he was needed aboard his ship for routine maintenance. Voran suspected the real reason was that Jake Morrison did not want his presence to influence the Council's decision. It was a subtle gesture of respect for their autonomy. Very human. Does the Terran delegation wish to make a statement? Voran asked. Emma stood. Her uniform was crisp, and her bearing was military, but her voice was diplomatic. High Chancellor, we do not seek sanctions against the Relics Consortium. We do not seek reparations or territorial concessions. We seek only what we have always sought: fair trade agreements and mutual respect among all member species of this council. Captain Morrison has recommended that we accept the Relics apology and continue negotiations under revised protocols to prevent similar incidents. And one of the security vulnerabilities, Voran asked. Will Earth share the information it has gathered about Council system weaknesses? Emma smiled slightly. Chief Engineer Kim has prepared a comprehensive report detailing every vulnerability identified during the incident. We are providing it to the Council Security Division free of charge. We are also offering to assist in upgrading the systems to prevent future exploitation. This offer extends to all Council facilities, not just Asios Prime. The chamber was silent again. This was not how anyone had expected this to proceed. The aggrieved party was offering assistance. The victorious party was seeking no spoils. This was very human indeed. Voran called for a vote. The Council would censure the Relics Consortium for diplomatic misconduct and violation of safety protocols. The Council would accept Earth's offer to improve security systems. The Council would also revise the trade agreement between Earth and Relics, entirely in humanity's favor as restitution for the incident. The vote passed unanimously. As the session concluded, Ambassador Thorne approached Emma. He spoke quietly so only she could hear. Your captain is a remarkable being. He had the power to destroy Ambassador Chitara politically and personally. He chose to educate her instead. This is why my people respect humanity. You remember what it means to show mercy. Emma nodded. The captain says that mercy is not weakness. It is the choice to be strong in a different way. Taryn's eyes gleamed with approval. In 3 months, this incident will be taught in every diplomatic academy in the galaxy. They will study what Captain Morrison did and, more importantly, what. 3 months after the incident, Jake Morrison sat in a small bar on the commercial level of Axios Prime Station. The establishment was called the Gravity Well, and it catered to a mixed clientele of various species. The lights were kept low to accommodate species with sensitive vision. The atmosphere was relaxed and informal. It was a place where diplomats and military officers and merchants could set aside their formal roles and simply talk. Jake occupied a corner booth with a glass of earth whiskey in front of him. The amber liquid caught the dim light as he turned the glass slowly. He was not alone. Ambassador Thorin sat across from him, nursing something that looked like mercury, but was apparently a traditional Sorok's beverage. Next to Thorin sat Commander Vrix of the Lumine Collective, her crystalline form pulsing gently with contentment. At the end of the table was Ambassador Trell of the Vrelix, who had arrived at the station 2 weeks ago to personally oversee the implementation of the new trade agreement. They had become unlikely friends in the months following the incident. What had started as formal diplomatic meetings had evolved into regular gatherings, where they could speak freely without the constraints of official protocols. Tonight the conversation had turned philosophical, as it often did after the second round of drinks. Thorin leaned back in his seat, designed to accommodate his large frame. "Morrison, I must ask you something that has puzzled me since we first met. Why do your people warn us? You could simply act and claim provocation. The galaxy would accept it, given your capabilities." Jake took a sip of his whiskey and considered the question. He had been asked variations of it many times over the years. Each time he tried to find new words to explain something that was fundamental to human nature. Because we remember what it was like to be young as a species. We had wars that killed millions. We had genocides where we turned on our own people over differences in appearance or belief. We had weapons that could have destroyed our entire world. We came very close to using them more than once. He set down his glass. When we finally made it to the stars, we carried that history with us. Every human knows the stories. Every human learns about the wars and the mistakes and the times we nearly destroyed ourselves. We are determined to be better than our ancestors. When we say we are getting annoyed, it is not a threat to you. It is a warning to ourselves. It means the old instincts are surfacing, the ones we have spent centuries learning to control. We give you time to leave so we do not have to fight those instincts while also worrying about collateral damage. Vrix pulsed with a pattern that indicated deep thought. So the warning is an act of mercy toward yourselves as much as toward others. Jake nodded. Exactly. Self-control is the hardest thing any being can master. For humans, it requires constant effort. We are still persistent predators underneath the civilization. We still have the capacity for violence that helped us survive on a world that tried very hard to kill us. But we also have the capacity to choose not to use that violence. The warning is us choosing. Trell had been quiet for most of the evening. He still carried shame over what his government had instructed Chitara to do. But he had proven himself a capable and honest negotiator in the months since. Now he spoke with genuine curiosity. "Captain Morrison, may I ask what would have happened if Ambassador Chitara had escalated further? If she had somehow posed a genuine lethal threat?" Jake met his eyes steadily. "Then I would have stopped her permanently. Not out of anger or revenge, but because allowing her to harm my crew or damage the station would have been a failure of my responsibility. Mercy has limits, Trell. We will warn you. We will give you chances to walk away. We will show remarkable patience. But if you cross certain lines, we will do what is necessary without hesitation or regret." The bluntness of the answer hung in the air. Thorin broke the silence with a rumbling laugh. "And this is why the Sorok's respect humanity. You are honest about what you are. Many species pretend to be civilized while hiding their violent natures. Humans acknowledge their capacity for violence and work constantly to control it. There is honor in that struggle." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Rix told a story about a failed diplomatic mission on her homeworld, where a translation error had led to an accidental marriage proposal between two rival faction leaders. Thorin shared a tale from his military days about a young Sauroch soldier who had challenged a human marine to a strength contest and lost spectacularly. Trell even managed to laugh as he recounted Chitara's current assignment teaching basic diplomacy to newly hatched relics who were far more respectful students than she had been a diplomat. As the evening wore on, Emma Park arrived with Marcus Kim and Lisa Chung. They had finished their duties for the day and came to join their captain. The booth expanded as other patrons shifted to make room. More drinks were ordered. More stories were told. The line between species blurred in the warm camaraderie of shared experience. Marcus told the group about the security upgrades he had been implementing throughout the station. Your council systems are much better now. Not impenetrable, but significantly harder to exploit. We have also identified vulnerabilities in 17 other council stations and provided recommendations for each. Lisa shared news from the medical wing. We are developing new trauma protocols for multi-species incidents. The psychological profiles we gathered from the Chamber 7 situation have been invaluable. Several species respond to stress in ways we did not fully understand. This research will save lives. Emma reported on the status of the trade agreement. The first shipments of Earth grain arrived at Relics Prime last week. Initial reports indicate the crops are performing even better than expected in their low-light agricultural zones. In return, we have received the first batch of bioadaptive material specifications. Our engineers are already finding applications in ship hull design. Jake listened to his crew and his friends and felt something like peace. This was why humanity had come to the stars. Not to conquer or dominate, but to learn and share and grow alongside other species. The incident with Chitara had been unfortunate, but it had also been educational. The galaxy had been reminded of what humans were capable of when pushed. More importantly, it had been shown what humans chose not to do with that capability. Thorin raised his glass in a toast to Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the Perseverance. May you continue to demonstrate that civilization is not the absence of capacity for violence, but the choice not to use it unnecessarily. Everyone raised their glasses. Even Trell, who added his own sentiment. And may all species learn the first law before they need to experience it firsthand. They drank, and the evening continued. Outside the bar, the station bustled with activity. Ships arrived and departed. Diplomats negotiated. Merchants traded. Scientists researched. Life continued in all its messy, complicated, beautiful diversity. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through competence. Not through aggression, but through controlled strength. Not through domination, but through demonstrated restraint. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of Captain Morrison and Ambassador Chitara spread throughout the galaxy. It was told in military academies as a lesson in tactical thinking. It was told in diplomatic schools as a lesson in cultural awareness. It was told by parents to children as a warning and a reassurance. The galaxy understood now what some species had known for decades. Humans were dangerous not because they would hurt you at the slightest provocation, but because they would not hurt you until it became absolutely necessary. And by the time it became necessary, it was already too late. The phrase entered common usage across hundreds of worlds in dozens of languages. When a human says they are getting annoyed, you run. It was not fear exactly. It was respect. Humans had earned that respect through decades of careful interaction, through keeping their promises, through helping other species with their problems, through showing mercy when they could have shown force, through being exactly what they claimed to be: dangerous, capable, and restrained. A year after the incident, the Terran diplomatic vessel Perseverance was reassigned to deep space exploration. Jake Morrison was promoted to Commodore and given command of a small fleet. Emma Park became captain of the Perseverance. Marcus Kim was offered a position as Chief of Council Security Systems, which he accepted. Lisa Chun became the head of the Multi-Species Medical Research Institute. On their last night at Axios Prime before departing for their new assignments, the crew gathered one final time at the Gravity Well. The booth was crowded with friends from a dozen species. Thorin was there with several Saurox officers. Rix attended with her entire diplomatic staff. Trell brought Chitara, who had returned to the station for the occasion. She was different now, humbler, wiser. She approached Jake with visible nervousness. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I wanted to thank you before you leave. You could have destroyed my career and my life. Instead, you taught me the most important lesson I have ever learned. I am a better diplomat and a better being because of what happened in Chamber 7. Jake stood and offered his hand in the human gesture of respect. "Ambassador Chitara, we all make mistakes. What matters is whether we learn from them. You learned. That takes courage." They shook hands. The physical contact still made Chitara nervous, but she held firm.